This is our third live Zoom church service, and we're all learning this technology together. And I have to say, I think we're doing a pretty awesome job so far. It gets better every week, and we're figuring out how to turn this into a pretty classy kind of production. So thank you all for being part of that process and for showing up here. Welcome. I'm Roz Cook, and I will be leading the program today. Thank you all for joining in. For anyone who's here for the first time, I'd like to share just a few tips. The format of our church service will be familiar, yet not quite the same as if we were all in the building together. We will have music, but no hymns. And our joys and concerns will happen at the very end after the postlude. We do that so that it is not part of the recording and we can keep that part private. And I'm very, very happy to welcome Kaden Sheffield to be back here with us today, sharing something that is also entitled The Heroine's Journey. And I'm sure it's going to be an absolute treat. All right, so let me begin as I share some opening words. Travel isn't always pretty. It isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it hurts. It even breaks your heart. But that's okay. The journey changes you. It should change you. It leaves marks on your memory, on your consciousness, on your heart, and on your body. You take something with you. Hopefully, you leave something behind. That was a quote by Anthony Bourdain. Okay, we will begin the service by lighting our chalice. Tom Begush should be somewhere right nearby, and I've asked him to do that honor this morning.
Good morning. Here I am. Ta-da! The world is full of difference, of color, of spice, of thoughts, of dreams, of languages, of dances, of songs, of stories, and of ways of reverence. When we wander, overwhelmed by this cacophony of wonder, lover of life, help us find the unity in all this diversity, the hearts and hopes, the love and compassion that can connect us all.
Thank you. That was perfect. I'm now going to invite you to a unison reading of our covenant, but then I'm going to actually uninvite you for a unit from reading aloud, because I asked everybody to join in last time and it was lovely, except for the fact that it turned out to be sort of this horrible jumble of voices, which would sound great in person, but didn't sound very good on our recording. So this time, forgive me, I'm going to ask you to all stay muted, but I hope you will read along with me at home. As you know, we are people of conscience who live by our own values and strive to be good citizens. When we get together on Sundays, we make promises together out loud and to each other. So the covenant is on the screen. And again, I encourage you to read aloud in the privacy of your own home. Love is the doctrine of our congregation. The quest for truth is our holy right, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in friendship. Thus do we covenant. Again, the joys and sorrows will come at the end of the program this morning. So next up is the offertory. Every week when we are in church, we take up an offering. We literally pass the basket around the room. Although we aren't sitting in our sanctuary right now, And unfortunately, no one is preparing food and coffee next door in hospitality. And neither are the children having a fun time learning in the RE building. But we still have to pay the bills for those spaces and keep the air conditioning running so that when we get back inside those buildings, the whole things haven't melted down because of the 117-degree days. So I encourage you to please give as generously as you can so that our beloved campus will be in great shape when we finally get back to it. So while you are listening to some music, and I assume Joe is playing, please consider what would be the most convenient way for you to contribute. As I said, the church still needs your support. You could write a check, use our PayPal account, or maybe set up your bank account to make monthly direct payments to church. And again, if you would like to make a cash donation, I'm offering to send my husband, Tom, over to your house later, wearing his mask, of course, to pick it up.
Kind friends all gathered round. There's something I would say. What brings us together here has blessed us all today. Love has made a circle that holds us all inside, where strangers are as family and loneliness can hide. You must give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your heart to tears and laughter, and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. I've walked the mountains in the rain. I've learned to love the wind. I've been up before the sunrise to watch the day begin. I always knew I'd find you, though I never did know how. But like sunshine on a cloudy day, you stand before me now. So give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your heart to the tears and laughter, and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Love is born of fire. It's planted like a seed. Love can't give you everything, but it gives you what you need. Love comes when you're ready. Love comes when you're afraid. It'll be your greatest teacher, the best friend you have made. So give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your heart to the tears and laughter, and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. You must give yourself to love. Give yourself to love.
Oh, I was wrong, and sometimes I'm glad to be wrong. Thank you so much for sharing that, Paul. We have so many talented musicians, and it is wonderful when they share what they can do with us. It's so much better than music from people we don't know or some canned performance. Well, we've gotten to the best part. Right now, I'm very happy to welcome back our good friend Kaden Sheffield, who very often drives probably over an hour each way to get to us in Glendale. And I'm so glad she can join us from the comfort of her own home this morning. Welcome back, Kaden.
Hi, everybody. This is really cool and really different, isn't it? Can everyone hear me? I hope so. Okay. I just wanted to acknowledge before I start that this morning I started the morning by watching John Robert Lewis take his last trip across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. So I wanted to acknowledge that because his memories will be with us for this week, and hopefully permanent change will come. So I wanted to talk about journeys. The old Chinese curse goes, "May you live in interesting times." Well, we are certainly living in interesting times right now. Times no one could have imagined just 6 months ago. Back then, my husband and I were trying to decide where we'd like to travel this summer, which locations and experiences we'd like to check off on our bucket list for the golden years. Everyone we knew was either engaged in or planning what we then considered normal things: gatherings with friends and family, celebrations of holidays and milestones, goals to aim for. We were like the hero in the hero's journey myths, ready to ride out to meet whatever challenges came up, to seek our own particular holy grail and return home again. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, everything evaporated. Something invisible and deadly had settled over the land, shutting down almost every part of normal life. We were asked to confine ourselves to our homes or to shelter in place, to refrain from going within 6 feet of other people, to wear masks that concealed our expressions and muffled our speech, even as it protected us and others. Most of us chose to listen to and follow the recommendations of the health experts, hoping that this would soon pass and we could return to normal again. I don't know about you, but my husband and I turned to stories to entertain and distract us until the all clear rang out. We binge watched television series that took us to faraway times and places, and downloaded or ordered books we'd been meaning to read. And certainly stories can do those light tasks for us as we endure difficult times. But as the weeks wore on, we began to realize that a quick return to normal wasn't likely. And we not only began to run short of stories that distracted us, but to tire of mere distraction itself. We began to see, hear, and feel differently. We noticed small things in our house and yard, how the quality of light shifted as the sun slid along the wall, how the pre-dawn chorus of birds starts with one bird, then swells, then fades at sunrise, how the rooms of the house felt full of so many people and times as we walked through them. Our confinement had required us to stop, be still, and attend to things we usually ignored or just didn't have time for. It was also putting us in touch with our inner selves, carrying messages. I began to hear phrases that seemed to capture my mood. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil," came up often. And I began to recall images of the wasteland from the Fisher King Grail story and lines from T.S. Eliot's poem, The Wasteland. I saw in my mind the faces of my long dead relatives as they repeated words of wisdom they'd shared with me in life. I began to sense we were all living an important new myth, one that was calling us to balance our too heavy focus on the hero's journey with a stop in the realm of the heroine. It was nothing less than a call to enter a new reality. As weeks have stretched into months, we've all begun to learn our way around this new reality. Elbow handshakes, masks, hand sanitizers, Zoom meetings, even for church, have become more familiar. We find joy in small domestic things like fixing dinner or growing a garden. A mere trip to the grocery store can make me as happy as it once made my dog. We find, instead of grand outward plans, that we are focusing on smaller, more inward things. We, who as individuals and as a nation, were used to being the hero on a hero's journey. Think manifest destiny, think the space race. We are now on the heroine's journey. What is that, and where will it take us? The heroine's journey is far less known in our culture, but it's quite commonly found in myths and fairy tales. It's the story of a young girl who was suddenly and usually against her will forced into some form of imprisonment or confinement. To return home, she must complete several impossible tasks or resist some impossible temptations. The heroine's journey, in some ways, is the mirror image of the hero's, but where the hero must journey outward and accomplish his tasks alone in order to find himself, the heroine must journey inward to discover that she is not alone, that she is part of the huge cosmic network of nature. Let me explain using an example from ancient Greece. In the myth of Psyche and Eros, Psyche, whose name means both butterfly and soul, remember that please, is the most beautiful of three princesses, and yet no one will marry her. An oracle tells her parents that she must be left on a mountaintop where her husband will claim her. Reluctantly, they do so. Up there, Psyche falls asleep and is whisked away by Zephyr, the west wind, where she awakens in a beautiful palace. There she is told the new rules, that this is her new home, that she can never leave it, that her husband will come to her only by night, and that she must never try to discover his identity. Slowly, she begins to learn her way around and gets used to the new rules. All but one. Don't ever try to see your husband. Of course she does, by lighting a lamp and discovering that her husband is none other than the exquisitely handsome Eros, god of love himself. A drop of oil falling from the lamp onto his shoulder awakens him, and he flees, saying, "Love cannot live where there is no trust." All true enough and good advice, but that's not the end of the story. Psyche refuses to accept an eternity of solitary confinement and asks Aphrodite, the goddess of love and Eros's mother, for help. Well, you know how poorly mothers-in-law fare in these stories. Aphrodite is jealous, so she gives Psyche a series of impossible tasks to perform, such as sorting a huge pile of mixed seeds overnight, collecting golden wool from a flock of fierce sheep. Yes, fierce sheep. Maybe they had some back then, I don't know. And finally, going to Hades and bringing back water from the toxic river Styx. And a box containing all the beauty of Persephone, queen of the underworld. Herself another example of a heroine abducted and confined. See how common these are. Psyche accomplishes each task not alone, but with the help of small creatures from nature. Ants sort the seeds for her, thorn bushes gather the golden wool, and a bird flies over the river Styx and collects water in a cup without touching its water. At this point, Zeus intervenes at Eros' request and tells Aphrodite that Psyche and Eros, remember, Psyche, soul, and Eros, love, belong together. A nice story, somewhere between myth and fairy tale, but I think much of it speaks to our situation today. Like Psyche, we too have been whisked into a new, unfamiliar world, one with new rules that we're still trying to figure out. With whom can we gather? How do we greet one another? How do we accomplish all the necessary rituals of life, both daily life and our milestones? Like Psyche, we seem to be reaping the consequences of trying to go beyond. Psyche tried to go beyond her limits and tempt fate by breaking faith with love. Like her, we have broken faith. We have tried endlessly to go beyond our limits in our use of nature, in our use of money, in our use of one another, and we have broken faith with ourselves. And like Psyche, we are now trapped and in search of the love that animates us and must perform certain tasks to set ourselves free. It's interesting to me that the first task asks us to sort things out, seeds in particular. This is a time when each of us can sort through our lives individually, and our nation can sort through its life collectively and decide which seeds to plant going forward. In this, we are helped by the ants, the small bits of wisdom told to us by that still, small voice within, that voice that we now have time and silence enough to hear. Our next task is to go wool gathering, an apt metaphor for brainstorming new possibilities. For we cannot return to the world the way it was before, nor, if we really think about it, do we want to. There were many things broken in that world, and we can now mine our wool gathering to find the golden ideas that will bring forth a new, better world from this one. One of the lessons we might learn from this task is that life isn't always a zero-sum competition in which we must take gold by force. Nature has its own ways, which, if we work with her, can create win-win situations where everyone benefits. Our final task, like Psyche's, like any heroes or heroines, is to face death. For it is in admitting our mortal limits that we find the courage to soar above the river Styx, to see our place in the larger scheme of things, to see our life as an arc that is part of a greater circle. That, in turn, gives us the courage to carry with us the deep, beautiful urgency that vivifies our time on this earth. This is often symbolized in story by coming to lie beside the still waters, as in the 23rd Psalm, the still waters in the middle of the valley of the shadow of death. So, myths and stories can do much more for us during the pandemic than merely distract or entertain. If we allow ourselves to take the time given to us to reflect on what all of this means or could mean to us, to the world, and to the future, we, like Psyche, will return to a new life, one in better balance with nature, society, and love. In researching for this presentation, I discovered a poem by Wendell Berry that I think captures very well how we can find peace as we take this heroine's journey. So I'd like to end it by sharing this with you. It's called The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in the beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. Wendell Berry. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kaden. I want to say, tell us another story. That first one was so wonderful. So please take that as knowing that we will be happy to invite you back as soon as you're willing to come. Thank you. All right, now is the time in our service for the unison reading of our mission statement. You will see it on the screen in a moment, but again, I'm going to ask you to please keep yourself muted and feel free to say it in the privacy of your own home. We agree to provide a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for living better lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches. For our closing words, Tom, if you would please extinguish the chalice before our fire alarm goes off here at home. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. I think we have postlude music coming up, or are we going right